There have been quite a few developments in the cases against Donald Trump at all. In fact, well, listen, let's face it, there's so many charges in 4 different jurisdictions and more to come. There's going to be news every day. That's kind of the whole point. They want to distract you from the actual business of electing the next president. So let's get to some of the major highlights with Jordan Sekulow. He's the executive director of American Center for Law and Justice and, of course, host of Sekulow right here on Salem News Channel. Thank you so much for joining us again. Jordan?
Thanks, Larry.
I want you to comment first on an interview President Trump gave to our colleague Hugh Hewitt on the Hugh Hewitt Show here on Salem News Channel. Take a look at this.
Number one, do you think you could get a fair trial in D.C. or in Atlanta?
No, I can't. No.
So when is the transfer of trial motion going to be made in D.C.?
They are political indictments, and even the ones like Atlanta, let's call them local, more local, they're all run out of the DOJ. Manhattan is run out of the DOJ. They actually took their top guy, put him in to run the Manhattan office.
Yeah, that's 100% true, in fact. DOJ guy left the Justice Department, went to Manhattan, helped them with their prosecution. The president's right, of course. Now, Hugh says, when will you make the motion to transfer? Let's be real, Jordan Sekulow. Is there anybody in the United States of America who hasn't already formed an opinion, a probably pretty strong, passionate opinion about Donald Trump? This is sort of a fool's errand. Where can Donald Trump ever get a fair trial?
Yeah, I mean, this is where it becomes more difficult. Now, in the state charges, that we're moving them to federal court kind of opens up the door to a bigger region, a bigger jury pool.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you were to move the case out of Georgia from Fulton County to the Northern District of Georgia in the federal court system, you're getting a whole bunch of other counties, some that are red, to pull jurors from. So you wouldn't just be in a county that was like 90% for Biden. So you could make at least an attempt to get a more fair and impartial jury. So that's something you definitely have to consider on the removal side there. In
I
DC,
hear you, but if I could, I mean, listen, we already know that this is all political anyway. They're inventing law as they go along. So since it's political, the government is going to say, oh, no, if we draw the jury pool from there, those are all MAGA types, so it won't be fair for them. It's not an impartial jury. It's just a more politically balanced jury.
Right. I mean, that's the kind of the bizarre part is that that's the best hope here is, and this is why we honestly believe that these disputes, when you're talking about a president of the United States, we've argued this in the Supreme Court, and we're clear while they were president, that they don't really belong in these court systems. Right. They weren't created to set up these kind of disputes. That we have clear ways to punish presidents. We have the impeachment and removal of the president you can go through with Congress that can bar them from office in the future. But now you're even seeing, and this is the crazy stuff, like this 14th Amendment Section 3 move. Yeah. Suddenly, all these law professors who are 80 years old and have been at Harvard for 50 years, all of a sudden feel like the 14th Amendment and this Section 3 can bar a president self-executing, which means a Democrat Secretary of State somewhere could just say, well, I think Donald Trump committed insurrection, so I'm not going to count his votes even if you put him on the ballot.
Right.
So this, again, it's insanity. It's the Trump derangement syndrome in the system of law. I think you even saw that yesterday if you watched any of that trial in Georgia, 19 defendants, all these different counts, all a federal movement charged by Mark Meadows. I mean, it's insanity to even try to wrap your head around. But you said it right. The idea is, and they have not been successful yet, but their idea is to make it look like President Trump, and there's even some Republicans who want this to be done, to make it look like President Trump has just got too much to deal with to run or be president.
And he's untouchable, and you don't want to align yourself with him. That's the whole goal here.
Right.
Jordan, let me ask you, you mentioned yesterday's hearing, Sidney Powell and Mr. Cheeseborough, they've been able to separate themselves from the other 16 defendants. They're going to go on their own fast track. Their trial, they requested a speedy trial. That'll begin in, I think, 5 weeks. There's no possible way the other defendants can make that kind of timeline. What is going to happen there? Even the judge was skeptical that they can go forward on the timeline that the DA wants. What do you expect to happen in Atlanta? Do you expect it to be moved to a federal jurisdiction?
I still think the Mark Meadows case will be very telling because he was the chief of staff. The president himself, I think we have Supreme Court precedent, a case we argued that any time a president, and this I think would exist as a former president, has a case brought against them, they can have it resolved in federal court and always have that option to do that. So I think President Trump definitely has that option. I think Mark Meadows likely will get that option. The question will be, does it apply to everyone else? And the judge was kind of saying, why would we get started here, potentially even have an entire case, and then by the time this gets through the jurisdictional issues of the 11th Circuit, the U.S. Supreme Court, they take our jurisdiction away. So what is the point? So this idea of, yeah, you're supposed to be able to provide a speedy trial, but a speedy trial that can come to a conclusion. Yeah. And so I think there was serious doubt there from the judge in Fulton County that, again, any of this can get done very quickly. I mean, obviously, you tried to meet the speedy trial standards when you invoked that. I don't think many others will. I think it was a unique strategy put forward to kind of put the pressure on the DA to say, okay, how are you going to bring 150 witnesses? How are you really going to even go through the jury selection process and meet these standards?
And it exposes the slapshot way that they've had 3 years, Jordan Sekulow, since the events of January 6th. They throw it together here, and you would think the DA would have dotted the I's and crossed the T's on issues like this before breaking precedent and charging a former president, if I can use a bit of a sound-alike there. What are those homonyms? Yeah. Jordan Sekulow, one other question, and this sort of really plays into the wheelhouse that we love from your show, where you sort of give your analysis and kind of legal advice on things like this. Here's President Trump again with Hugh Hewitt.
So if you have to go to trial, will you testify in your own defense?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You'll take the stand.
That I look forward to, because that's just like Russia. That's all the fake information from Russia.
Straight shot, Jordan Sekulow, legal and is that a good idea? Do you think his lawyers agree that that's a good idea?
I think it'd be a case-by-case approach. Usually it's not. I mean, usually your defendants don't. These are very unique cases, and you're dealing with a unique client here who's tough and who is willing to fight the fight. And so I think you'd have to, again, this would be like a game-time decision. I don't think I'd declare it right now. I think you'd see how each of these developed to see if it was worth the president's time to even testify, honestly.
Yeah. One other question with regard to a lot of these cases that have been brought, and that is the judges putting preconditions on Mr. Trump's release, where they say that he can't speak about the case, he can't tweet about the case. This is such a handcuff for him. Because, first of all, why can't an American publicly defend themselves at any given time, number one? But also, if someone's running for office, he's going to be in debates. He's going to be giving interviews. He's going to be asked about this. And he's supposed to say, yeah, can't talk about that.
Yeah, it's absurd. And I think that is pretty much unenforceable for the most part. I mean, I think if you were intimidating a specific witness, that's one thing. But if you were just talking about this is a witch hunt, this is ridiculous, they don't have a case, no one's going to be able to enforce that in court. If they do, they're going to. If they try, they're going to lose. The First Amendment almost always wins out, thank God, in our legal system, and that's what we hope and fight for at the ACLJ every day, is to make sure that First Amendment continues to mean what it says.
Yeah. Finally, real fast, we've only got about 30 seconds left. Yeah. The charges coming against Hunter Biden, we're told by David Weiss by the end of the month on the gun charges. That's the lowest of all low-hanging fruit, isn't it?
It was, and really this was forced by the judge. So I don't think David Weiss just had this come to Jesus moment where he's now suddenly wants to super indict Hunter Biden. The judge had set a timeline here because they threw out the last plea. And so this move had to happen. So we'll see if in this time period, if another plea deal does come into effect. But you're right. Of all the charges, without the tax charges, this is pretty weak. And again, you have to start questioning. We have to start questioning our own principles to say, how close to an election do we say, hey, this is wrong? You know what? You had all this time, David Weiss, to bring this against Hunter Biden. Why? And you've tried twice. You failed to figure out a plea deal. You failed these last couple times. Now you're getting close to an election.
Right.
Is it right, in theory, to even be doing it this way to the president's son?
Right. And I would say, actually, no, it's not right. That's where Congress steps in. That's why the impeachment process is there. Jordan Sekulow, great stuff. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks, Larry.